Alright guys, we're in chapter 7, A New Friend in Need. We got 20 pages left of this book. We will finish it by the end of the week. And be prepared to send it back at your next packet, and I will shoot you out your new book. In the days that followed, Chester's behavior was exemplary. He purred and he cooed and he was cleaned his paws, and he rubbed up against everyone's legs to show that he was a good boy he was. Show what a good boy he was. I was getting worried. Chester acts that way only when he has something devious in the back of his mind, but I didn't know what it was. He had tried everything in the book to get rid of the vampires, and all his effort had failed. But I knew from the expression on his face that something was definitely up. Of course, I did know for certain because he had not spoken to me since the stake incident. I guessed he realized that my heart just wasn't in the destruction of the bunny vampire. In fact, I was beginning to like the little fella. The Moreaus were relieved by Chester's improved behavior. They didn't know how to account for his strange doing, but to their credit, they were willing to let bygones be bygones. That means let the past be the past. The only disturbing factor in all our lives was the reappearance of the white vegetables each morning in the kitchen, and yet, after a few days, even that stopped, and life seemed to return to normal. One evening, I dropped by Binocular's cage to chat. I found myself doing that more and more since Chester had stopped talking to me. Of course, Binocular didn't talk back, but he was a good listener. I began to think of him as a friend, a strange one, granted, but one can't always choose one's friends. I was distressed this particular evening to see that he was dragging his ears, as it were. That's an idiom meaning that he didn't look very healthy. He looked tired and listless. I felt his nose, and it seemed a little warmer than it should have been. I became alarmed. I ran over to Toby, who was doing a picture puzzle on the floor, and began to bark. Something I do only in the case of extreme emergencies, since even I do not care for the sound. "What's the matter, Harold?" Toby asked without moving. "Are there burglars?" I ran to the cage and looked at Binocular. I looked back at Toby and whimpered. Toby just looked confused. "Do you want to play with Binocular? Shall I take him out of his cage?" "Woof," I responded, indicating I hoped that was indeed what he would do. "I'll ask Mom and Dad, Harold. You wait here." He was back in a minute, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Harold, but Mom says you can't play with the rabbit. It causes too much commotion." I looked down at the floor and whimpered again. "Sorry, Harold. Maybe later, when we're all in here together." I regarded Binocular, whose eyes met mine. He gave a little shudder, and I felt like crying. My friend was sick, and I didn't know what to do. I wish I could tell Chester, but I knew it was no use. He was just too mad at me. I would have to sort this one out on my own. That night, I couldn't sleep, worrying about Binocular. I decided to go downstairs and check on his condition. What I saw when I entered the living room horrified me. Binocular was out of his cage on the floor while Chester stood in front of him, a piece of garlic around his neck, and his arms outstretched, blocking the kitchen door. Suddenly, it all fell into place. Now, that's an idiom. Nothing fell there. Nothing fell into place. So these are idioms, but you know what it means. The pieces of the puzzle came together in his mind. Chester was starving Binocular, of course. That's why he seemed so listless. And that's why the vegetables had stopped turning white. Chester had made it impossible for Binocular to eat. "Chester," I cried. Chester jumped very high jump. "What are you doing here?" He spat at me as he landed. "I know what you're doing, Chester, and the jig is up." The little bunny never hurt anybody. All he's doing is eating his own way. What do you care if he drains a few vegetables? "He's a vampire," Chester snarled. "Today vegetables, tomorrow the world." "I think perhaps you're overstating your case," I suggested cautiously. "Go back to bed, Harold. This is larger than the two of us. It may seem harsh, but I'm only being cruel to be kind." Who are you being kind to?" I wondered as I went back upstairs. The tomatoes and the zucchinis of the world? Maybe a few cabbages? I just didn't make sense. But I could see it wasn't going to get anywhere with Chester tonight. Tomorrow, however, would be another story. I was determined that, by hook or crook, my friend Binocular would eat by sundown the next day.